Yo, what is going on, everyone? It's your boy Lick That Subscribe Button 420 here, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different than normal. So in all the games I've played, there's been a handful that I've seen a lot of people that really don't like them, or there's a lot of complaint for them around, or they have negative reviews, whatever it may be, but they're games that I actually got some enjoyment from, and it might be like a different perspective or a different gameplay style. So I wanted to share some of those games with you guys today and see maybe if you haven't tried them because you've heard bad things about them, and maybe shed some light that they're not really as bad as you hear, and maybe give you guys some extra games to try out in your spare time that you might not have found enjoyment from otherwise. Or maybe if you have played these games, you'd be willing to give them a try again after I do a little bit of explaining and talking up or whatever. So without further ado, let's not waste any time. Hate wasting time. Let's just get right into the list. So first up on the list, we have Resident Evil 5. So I think for most of these games, I'll go through what the general complaints are and why they're not so popular, and then kind of give you why I enjoyed them in a little way. You'll kind of see what I mean as we go. So starting off here with Resident Evil 5, the main two complaints I see from the game is, one, it's not traditional Resident Evil, and two, the AI you have to play with is terrible. So as for the first point, I kind of get it, but at the same time, I like to think about it differently. For sure, traditional Resident Evil, for all those of you who don't know, is survival horror, dark and spooky atmosphere, scary, run away from the zombie type of games. Whereas Resident Evil 5 is broad daylight, guns blazing, mow them down in the streets kind of game. And I can definitely see if you're specifically looking for a horror, scary experience, not liking it. But I think what they ended up going for is just something, it's definitely different. And I would like to treat every game I play as its standalone game in a vacuum, not as it needs to follow the formula the rest of the games followed. For sure, I get the point, but for me, I like to treat it separately. It's a different Resident Evil game. Still had a fun time with it. As for the AI argument, yeah, for sure, 100%. The solo AI is terrible, which is why what I'm recommending with this game is the co-op. I played this game fully co-op. Yeah, do not play this game solo. The AI is atrocious. But if you happen to have a friend and you guys are looking to have a little fun time, Resident Evil 5 co-op is a blast. For those of you who haven't really seen it, I'm sure I'll have some gameplay up in the back, but there's a bunch of different guns, a bunch of different levels, and a bunch of zombies, and you and your friend just have to go through, not die, save each other, and just start shooting things. And as a Resident Evil game, it also is the end of one of the main and most popular villain story arc. Albert Wesker, who is pretty much the big bad up until this point, gets the conclusion to his story in this game, so it's kind of a big deal, to be honest. And while yes, playing it solo is definitely a pain, playing this game with a friend was some of the funniest stuff I've played in a long time. For sure, the game is definitely clunky and has its ups and downs, but playing with someone that you like just kind of makes up for it in a way. And you will be warned, me and my friend screamed at each other multiple times, but it was all a good experience, with some exceptions. I actually wanted him to, but we don't talk about that. But playing this game with a friend is actually a blast, and that is mostly how I would recommend playing the game. The game for sure isn't perfect. The temple level in particular, with a bunch of sunlight beams, was not it. And if you have arachnophobia, God, I am so sorry for you. Maybe dodge this one. But if you're just looking for a good time, Resident Evil 5 can definitely scratch that itch. And if you have a friend looking to play a game with you, this is definitely one I'd recommend checking out. Coming in next on the list, we have Devil May Cry 4. And before we pull out the pitchfork, I'm not here to argue that it's the best game in the series or anything, just that it is definitely way more hated than it actually should be. The two main complaints, maybe three main complaints this game gets is, one, the main character isn't Dante, two, the second half of the game is just kind of the first half of the game but in reverse, and three, the cube puzzles bottom tech. So as for for the main character, it's kind of a toss-up. If you've grown up having Dante as the main character, the swap is definitely gonna feel a little weird, but especially if you started with Devil May Cry 5, seeing where Nero started, it makes infinitely more sense. And Nero as a character himself isn't a bad main character. It's just that people were so attached to Dante that any change was obviously gonna be a little weird. But like Nero's character, voice actor, motivations, like Nero's character is good. It's just not Dante, which I get, but like just give the guy a shot, you know what I mean? Mostly for if you've already played 5 as your first game, going back to see how Nero got to where he was is definitely important. But even if you are a fan of the old ones, it's not like Devil May Cry 4 is too far away from that. And you get to play as Dante in a little bit anyway, so it's not really like that big of a departure. The second argument of the levels being flipped, yeah, no, definitely just rushed development time, but the core game is good enough that I think it kind of gets a little bit of a pass. For those of you who don't know, there's like 3 or 4 main bosses you take out as Nero, and then you pretty much just take them out again backwards as Dante for the second half of the game. Is it lazy? Yeah, but playing as Nero and Dante is fun, so it didn't really bother me as much as it bothered other people, I guess. And then yeah, the puzzle rooms are terrible, but like, you know, we don't really need to dwell on that for too long. So in my opinion, if you've heard terrible things about Devil May Cry 4 compared to 3 and 5 for sure, still the best in the series, the most polished, try that one out. As for Devil May Cry 3, if it's better than 4 is arguable. I think I might prefer it a little bit, but 4 is still a solid entry. People treat it like it's the worst thing in the world. The Devil May Cry remake DMC was definitely infinitely worse than Devil May Cry 4. 4 was still a really good game, and if you're just in it for solid gameplay and demon killing, give 4 a shot. If you've been avoiding it, definitely worth the time. And next up on the list, we have a good old favorite of mine, Fire Emblem Engage. If you saw my other video, this comes as no surprise that I'm here defending my GOAT, but that aside, Fire Emblem Engage gets a little too much hate in my opinion. The 2 main criticisms I hear of this game is the super anime archetype characters and the story being some hot garbage. As for the character designs, can't really say much on that. It's really hit or miss. If you've grown up with the anime art style and archetypes, it's kind of just normal for you, or if you really just care about gameplay and don't care about characters and story, it's probably fine for you as well. But if you are someone that strictly likes the more military, serious, like Path of Radiance looking Fire Emblems, then yeah, that one might be a little hard to get over. Don't really blame you for that. As for the story, I'm gonna try to explain this, by the way. I think I have this right, because you correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, the Fire Emblem team works in 2 different, well, teams. There's the team that makes the stuff like Three Houses, Echoes, and Path of Radiance, and then another team that makes stuff like Engage and Fates. And if you've played those games, you can see a common pattern here. 3 of them are super story driven, but have some kind of weird mechanics, and the other 2 have almost no story whatsoever, but are godlike gameplay for the most part. So hopefully that helps you understand that a bit. For me personally, I don't really play Fire Emblem games for the story. If it has a good one, that's awesome. I'd love to see it, but if it doesn't, I'm really just there for the strategy, and Engage brings that in every way imaginable. This has been said a couple times, but Engage is by far the best gameplay in the series. Because of the emblem system, the game pretty much has about as infinite replayability as possible. I'm not going to go too into depth because I don't want this video to be 7 hours long, but the Engage gameplay is really at the top of the charts in the series, and I think it's really a good starting point for the Fire Emblem series. If you haven't played a Fire Emblem game, I think Engage should either be your first game or your last game, and that's mostly because all of the main characters from the past games are present, so it'd be really cool to have it as your last game and have all the nostalgia from all the old MCs, or have it as your first game and then get interested in all the characters and go back and play their games. That would really be pretty cool too. But either way, Engage, amazing gameplay. The story's not even terrible, it's just a feel-good story, and I mean, I like happy endings, but Engage, definitely way too hated. If you want to try out a really good strategy game, please give it a shot, and yeah, that's about it. Next up on the list, we have Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, but just the zombies mode. If the multiplayer mode was good, I really couldn't tell you because I'm the guy that only buys COD games for zombies. Sorry about that one. But the zombies mode in IW is about the most underrated thing in this community possible. The main criticism the zombies mode gets in this game is that it's not made by Treyarch, which for those of you who don't know, Treyarch is the company that made the zombies modes in Black Ops 1, 2, 3, World at War, you know, the ones that come to your head when you think of Black Ops zombies. But IW Zombies is not too different, but super cool, honestly. And the theming they go with in some of the maps is super nice and unique. And it honestly just hits a part of my brain that sometimes Treyarch Zombies doesn't even hit itself. The maps are all themed after like an era of, I guess, like kind of movies almost. Like there's a 90s map, an 80s map, 70s, etc, etc. There's 5 maps in total. 3 of them are really good. One of them might even be my favorite map of all time above some of the Treyarch maps. And one of them is an absolute terrible abomination we shall never ever mention in the monstrosity that thing is. But talking about the good maps for a little bit, my absolute favorite is the release map, which you don't have to pay any extra for since it's the one that comes with the game, and that is Zombies in Spaceland. Zombies in Spaceland is actually a masterpiece map. It's set in a amusement park in the, I think it's 80s or 90s, and you go around, there's a bunch of rides, there's killer clowns, you know, all the weapons like you'd expect, everything from that you normally want in zombies is there. It just has a nice weird fresh coat of paint and it just plays so nicely. The map is set into 3 different like quadrants, and then once you go find a teleporter in every place, you unlock the middle, which takes you to Pack-a-Punch, and the perks are pretty much the same as normal zombies. They just have some different names. There's a couple new ones, but mostly the same stuff there. If you're used to zombies, you'll be used to that. Power is the exact same as normal zombies as well. Dog rounds are replaced with killer clown rounds in this map specifically, so if you have a clown phobia, yeah, sorry about that one. But it just has so much uniqueness and personality in this one map. There's songs that play from that era throughout a speaker around the map. There's a bunch of cool little Easter eggs, and it really just feels like you're in that era when you play the map. And the layout is just so good. And if you haven't tried this map and you're a fan of zombies, please do yourself a favor and pick it up and give it a go. It is actually a masterpiece. The other maps in this mode that I think are good, Raven the Redwoods is, I believe, the 70s themed map. It is like a slasher Jason Voorhees Camp Crystal Lake kind of map. Super good. A lot of people say they didn't really like this one, but maybe it's just the theme for me, but I really like it. It has the 4 wonder weapons like Horizon or Origins. If you played zombies, you kind of know what I mean. It's these 4 different type of crossbows, and you just kind of go around this little campground. There's a bunch of like little Easter eggs to do. There's a rave mode, which is probably the biggest draw. That's actually how I found IW Zombies. You take like a perky or something, and it makes your screen go all super high contrast neon colors in like drug mode. Super cool, super unique, and again, it's just really thematic. And there's like a slasher boss, and it's an underrated map for sure that almost no one says they like for some reason, and I don't know why. The next map is Shaolin Shuffle, and if you're a guy that plays zombies for the Easter eggs, you'll hate this map from what I hear, but I don't do Easter eggs. I don't really care about them that much, and the just general gameplay on Shaolin Shuffle is honestly nice. Everyone says they hate it, but I think that's mostly for the specifics and like story reasons almost, and mostly the Easter egg. But on this map, you get like 1 of 4 different kung fu stances that you can level up by meleeing zombies. There's like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles tunnel. It's like a New York City. It's honestly not that bad, and I'm not sure why it gets that much hate. The other map is Attack of the Radioactive Thing. This one I can understand people not liking because it has very muted colors and it feels kind of dull, but it does fit the theme of the era it's going for. And again, apparently the Easter egg is terrible, but I don't do Easter eggs. But just the general map, it's just chill. I mean, it's alright. It's nothing amazing, but it's like I have fun playing it. And then the last map is like, as I said, an absolute abomination. That is the worst map ever created by humans, probably created by aliens, because no, that map is not it. But if you're a zombies fan, you've played the Black Opses, you know, you've played the World at War, and you want something new and refreshing that's not just spamming custom maps, try to give IW Zombies a try. If you have a little extra money to spend, it is really good. Even for Zombies in Spaceland alone, it is probably worth the price of entry. Give it a try. I'm sure you will not be disappointed. And finally, we get to the one on the list I am most passionate about, Dark Souls 2. Oh, this game. I've seen this game get flamed and flamed and flamed again, and then I went into it being kind of super low expectations, and yeah, no, it turns out it was actually really good, and FromSoft never misses. Now, don't get me wrong, there are obviously things about this game that are a lot worse than the other games, but let's go over the 3 main complaints I hear about Dark Souls 2. The 3 main things I hear about this game are there are a bunch of worthless, pointless, terrible bosses. The game is more linear than the first game and not as open in level design, and the game feels clunky, slow, and there's weird hitboxes. Starting with the point about bad and over-bloated bosses. Are there a lot of bosses? Yes, but the ones that people are really complaining about aren't really bosses. They're just normal enemies with a boss health bar, and if you can kill something in 3 hits, is it really hindering your progression? Not really. And as for the other side, there are so many great bosses in Dark Souls 2. Sir Alon, Smelter Demon, Burnt Ivory King, and then especially Luvnight and Dark Lurker are 2 of my favorite bosses in the entire series, so it's not like Dark Souls 2 is lacking in the boss department, to be honest. As for it being more linear than Dark Souls 1, I mean, every game is gonna have more linear level design than Dark Souls 1, but it's not like Dark Souls 2 is a straight line or everything, even just everything interconnected from Majula. Like, it's not like you're forced into one direction by any means. There's still a bunch of interconnectivity, it's just not as tightly linked as the first game, so I don't really know if that's a valid complaint. Like, sure, I guess, but there's definitely incredible level design. Like, you're not missing that at all if you're playing through this game. And as for Dark Souls 2 feeling clunky, if you've tried this game and you felt that the game felt super jank and you didn't know about what I'm gonna tell you right now, I feel so bad for you, but I'm about to change your perspective on life in a second. So in Souls games, there's normally at least one stat when you go to level up that is terribly useless. In Dark Souls 1, I think it was called Resistance. In Dark Souls 3, it was there, but I don't remember what it was called. There's always one stat that does pretty much nothing, right? And in Dark Souls 2, looking at the stat spread menu, it's the one that says Agility that looks super useless on paper. But what if I told you if you didn't level up this stat, you have been like megally handicapped, making the game unplayable for yourself? So what this stat does is it gives your roll more invincibility frames. So to put that into perspective, if you pick like 80% of the classes in the game, when you start off from day 1, when you spawn in, your roll is almost like 2 times as worse than it is in Dark Souls 1 at default. So once you have at least like 15 to 20 points in agility, all of a sudden your game is so smooth. Wow, you have a roll that does something. But if you played Dark Souls 2 not knowing that you have to invest into the agility stat, yeah, you're probably getting clipped off like every roll. And I'm so sorry if you didn't know that, but if you do now, go and try Dark Souls 2 again and you have a crazy Souls experience to behold. So yeah, overall, Dark Souls 2 definitely has its downsides. Some of the boss runbacks are despicable. There's a couple areas that are nightmarish, but the highs of Dark Souls 2 are definitely some of the highest highs in the series. The lows are some of the lowest, but the highs are up there. And on top of that, the PvP in Dark Souls 2 is some of the, like, honestly funnest PvP in all of the games. Like, 3 was really good. Elden Ring's been pretty fun so far, but Dark Souls 2 PvP, chef's kiss, honestly. So if you've been one of those people that you've played Elden Ring, you've played Dark Souls 3, but Dark Souls 2 has always been that, like, black sheep, felt kind of weird, especially if you didn't know about the agility stat thing, please, please, please go give Dark Souls 2 a try. Give it some love. You won't regret it at all. You know, for the most part, but I'm kidding. Give it a try. Hope you enjoy it. And yeah, that's about it. about it. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Hopefully some of these games on this list, maybe if you've already tried them, you'd want to go back and retry them now that I've done some explaining. And if you haven't tried some of these games, please go give them a shot. They're not as bad as everyone says, I promise. But that's gonna do it for me today. If you have some games that people say are bad that you think are good, let me know what they are in the comment section below, and give that subscribe button a nice 1, 2, 3 uppercut for me. Do your boy a little favor. But until next time, I will see you all later, and as always, have yourselves a good night.